The story opens with a brutal battle between Christians and Vikings. Vikings were ancient Scandinavian warriors from Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, known for their seafaring, raiding, and fierce combat skills. They lived by honor, revenge, and bravery, worshipping Norse gods like Odin, Thor, and Loki. They believed fallen warriors would be rewarded with Valhalla, a hall reserved for the strongest fighters. Simply put, Vikings lived as warriors and died as warriors. During the battle, a priest captures a Viking warrior and holds a crucifix before him, declaring that he will never reach Valhalla. The priest then drives the crucifix into the warrior's head. Before dying, the Viking signals that he will return for revenge. The scene cuts to the present day. A couple, Fergus and Sarah, move to a new home in the Scottish Highlands. They are there because of their son, Lucas, who has passed away. Sarah is emotionally lost, and Fergus hopes the move will help them start over. When they arrive, Sarah asks for the house key, and Fergus tells her it's hidden in a flower pot. As she enters the house, we learn that Fergus is an underground explorer. Inside, Sarah finds one of Lucas's old toys. She is overwhelmed by grief, realizing that while people leave, memories remain. She spends the day lost in those memories. Later, while bathing, she falls asleep and experiences a nightmare that reveals how Lucas died. He wandered onto the road while playing with his toy car and was struck by a vehicle, killing him instantly. Meanwhile, Fergus searches the land with a metal detector but finds nothing, until a neighbor named Elsa arrives. She explains that the area is called Warrior's Hill. She recognizes Fergus but doesn't know his name, and the two formally introduce themselves. Elsa mentions that she knew Fergus's father well, and gives him flowers to pass on to Sarah before leaving. After Elsa departs, Fergus resumes digging and uncovers a skull bearing the same crucifix seen in the opening scene. It belongs to the Viking warrior. Without hesitation, Fergus takes it home. Sarah questions whether it's real, and Fergus suggests it might be a prank, though it looks authentic. Sarah insists he never should have brought it back, calling it disrespectful and explaining that graves are not meant to be disturbed. Sarah says she will contact Father Stewart so the remains can be reburied properly. Fergus strongly disagrees, seeing the skull as an important discovery for his work. The argument escalates, and Sarah goes to bed upset. Later that night, Fergus hides the skull in a box inside his shed and locks it away. In the middle of the night, Sarah wakes up to the sound of her son laughing. Sarah goes into the hall to investigate the sound and finds Fergus watching old videos of their son. The laughter she heard was coming from the recording, which overwhelms her with emotion. At the same time, blood begins to seep from the box in the shed. Fergus later hears strange noises coming from the shed and goes outside to investigate. The door is locked, yet the noises continue. When he tells Sarah, she insists she hears nothing and leads him back inside. Moments later, the box in the shed opens on its own. That night, Fergus comes to bed, but Sarah turns and realizes he isn't beside her. Seconds later, the real Fergus enters the room and lies down, terrifying her. If that was Fergus just moments ago, then who was the first figure? Sarah dismisses the thought and forces herself to sleep. The next morning, Sarah plans to contact Father Stewart about reburying the skull. Before doing so, she decides to clean it. The skull is crawling with maggots, and no matter how many she removes, more keep appearing. In desperation, Sarah removes the crucifix embedded in the skull, an act she should never have committed. The lights immediately go out, and the skull begins to bleed violently, horrifying Sarah. The skull transforms into a Viking warrior who speaks to her in Norse, only for Sarah to awaken, realizing it was a dream. Outside the house, we see a man silently watching. Sarah later visits the church to meet Father Stewart. Meanwhile, Fergus notices Elsa near his home and follows her, finding her dancing alone. He approaches her, curious about his family history, since she knew his father well. Elsa invites him to her house for tea and reveals the truth. Fergus MacCatrick is of Viking descent. His ancestors were Scandinavian settlers in Scotland. Fergus is thrilled by this revelation and feels a powerful connection to his roots. When Elsa steps away to answer a call, Fergus notices a photograph of his father on the table beside a Scottish history book with a torn page. He photographs the missing page, sensing its importance. Elsewhere, Father Stewart speaks with the man watching Fergus's house. His name is Mungo, a villager. Mungo informs the priest that the Christian burial performed earlier was invalid, as the skull did not belong to a Christian. Back at home, tension erupts between Fergus and Sarah. Sarah insists the skull must be buried, but Fergus refuses. He now wants to sell it, believing it to be a valuable Viking artifact. Learning about his ancestry has made him emotionally attached to it, and he refuses to listen to Sarah's pleas. That night, Sarah dreams of the Viking once again. She wakes to hear Lucas's voice calling from inside the house. Following it, she sees Lucas standing before her and screams in terror. Fergus rushes in, comforts her, and calls a doctor. In front of Fergus and the doctor, Sarah begins speaking in an unfamiliar language, one she has never learned. This deeply unsettles Fergus. As the doctor checks her temperature, Sarah warns that she might bite him, then speaks cryptically about his wife. The doctor ignores her behavior. Sarah then breaks down, claiming Fergus doesn't love her and that he blames her for their son's death. Her words clearly suggest possession. With no other option, Fergus and the doctor sedate her. When Fergus asks for an explanation, the doctor suggests Sarah is suffering from extreme emotional trauma. Still, he admits the language she spoke was unrecognizable. He advises rest and leaves. A short while later, as Fergus works alone, Sarah awakens and begins wandering through the house, dancing in an eerie, unnatural way. Fergus enters and watches her in silence. While dancing, Sarah suddenly collapses, but Fergus catches her before she hits the ground. He brings her inside and calls Elsa, explaining everything that has been happening. Elsa speaks with Sarah, who admits she hears voices inside her head. When Elsa asks what the voices want, Sarah reveals they are demanding a priest. Elsa realizes the spirit inside Sarah is a Viking seeking revenge. Long ago, a priest killed the Viking by driving a crucifix into his head. That priest is long dead, but his descendant, Father Stewart, is still alive. The spirit wants him. Suddenly, Fergus hears a noise downstairs and goes to investigate. Briefly, he sees the spirit of the Viking warrior. By now, Fergus knows something is deeply wrong. When he returns, Sarah's condition has worsened. She is tearing pages from her notebook and behaving violently. Elsa calls Dr. Byrne, but it is too late. The doctor has already been killed by Sarah while possessed by the Viking spirit. Shortly after, Mungo arrives and removes Dr. Byrne's clothes, placing them into his bag. Later, Father Stewart visits Fergus. Fergus asks if he believes in ghosts, and the priest explains that ghosts are lost spirits. Fergus presses further, asking what happens if the spirit is evil. Father Stewart replies that such a spirit would do anything to survive, or to take revenge. Fergus insists that Sarah is possessed and begs him to perform an exorcism. Father Stewart refuses, saying he is not trained as an exorcist and cannot risk Sarah's life. Fergus mocks his hesitation, but Father Stewart agrees to at least speak with her. When the priest meets Sarah, she initially appears calm and normal. He asks if she would like to pray with him. Sarah replies that she would rather slit his throat. Instantly, the possession takes hold. She mocks Father Stewart, attacks his faith, and begins manipulating him. She harms herself until Fergus and the priest restrain her. Realizing there is no other choice, Father Stewart agrees to perform the exorcism. During the ritual, Father Stewart places holy water in Fergus's hand and begins the exorcism. At first, neither the prayers nor the holy water seem effective, but soon, Sarah's body rises into the air. As the ritual concludes, a white liquid pours from her mouth, followed by maggots, identical to those that once infested the skull. Sarah collapses, seemingly restored. Believing the exorcism has worked, Father Stewart and Fergus speak briefly. Fergus asks if everything is finally over. Father Stewart says it might be, and goes to check on Sarah, but she is gone. Sarah suddenly appears before him and reveals the truth. The spirit inside her was never a demon, but a Viking warrior, Thorvald Ironside. Father Stewart had unknowingly performed the exorcism incorrectly. The spirit was never expelled. Father Stewart tries to reach Sarah emotionally, reminding her of her son and telling her she has already lost one child and should not lose herself as well. But Thorvald Ironside twists the truth, blaming Sara for her son's death and feeding her guilt. Fully overtaken, Sara drives a crucifix into Father Stuart's head, killing him, exactly as the Viking priest was once killed. At last, the Viking warrior's revenge is fulfilled, but his spirit still remains inside Sara. Fergus arrives and discovers Father Stuart dead. Sara, who has briefly regained consciousness, is sobbing uncontrollably. Hearing the chaos, Elsa calls Mungo. The two clearly know each other. When Mungo arrives, he introduces himself as Mungo Macret and questions Fergus, asking whether he contacted anyone after the priest's death. Fergus says no. Mungo asks for Fergus's phone, and in his confusion, Fergus hands it over without thinking. Mungo then asks to see Sara. Upstairs, Mungo and Elsa examine Sara and agree that she has grown dangerously weak and must be moved immediately. Fergus finally understands why the exorcism failed. It was never a demon possessing Sara, but the spirit of a Viking. Demanding answers, Fergus confronts Mungo. Mungo reveals the truth. The spirit inside Sara is Thorvald Ironside, a legendary Viking warrior who needs their help. He explains that Fergus's father was deeply obsessed with Viking mythology and despised Christianity. The entire sequence of events was his plan. Before dying, he reburied the ancient cauldron so it would eventually be discovered by Fergus. Fergus and Sara were unknowingly part of this design, meant to give Thorvald Ironside a chance to complete his revenge and finally break the curse. But the spirit refuses to leave on its own. To free him, Mungo and Elsa must perform a ritual that will send him to the well of the afterlife. The ritual begins. Odin is invoked, and a glowing blue portal opens. To save his wife, Fergus must enter the other world and confront Thorvald Ironside himself. Fergus steps through the portal and challenges the Viking spirit to battle. A brutal fight follows. Thorvald initially overpowers Fergus, but Fergus, now fully embracing his Viking heritage, draws strength from his love for Sara and his will to save her. Fighting with everything he has, Fergus defeats Thorvald Ironside. In victory, Fergus honors the fallen warrior. Though Thorvald is already dead, his spirit must be released properly. Fergus grants him a warrior's end, allowing his spirit to finally ascend to Valhalla. Thorvald's revenge is complete, and his soul is freed. Fergus returns through the portal to his own world, where Sara survives. The curse is broken. The other world is sealed, and they are finally safe. The next day, Sara thanks Mungo for saving her life. She and Fergus leave the village for good. In the final scene, their house is seen burning behind them, a clear sign that they will never return. It also confirms the truth. Fergus's father had orchestrated everything from the beginning, and with that, boom, the movie ends. So friends, this was The Crucifix, Blood of the Exorcist, a simple yet unique horror story. There is no demon here, only a warrior's spirit driven by revenge. In the end, all it wanted was a proper death, one that would grant it passage to Valhalla. That's everything. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe. I recently covered a fascinating film where a witch helps a cancer patient. Check it out. The link is in the description and below. See you next time.